Anybody?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for organizing this meeting and come to this meeting. I think that it is always interesting and enriching to have a change of views with the major groups, and I think that major groups have already provided the process with many interesting ideas, part of which also my constituency, the European Union member states, have included in its negotiating positions. I would like in particular to comment on the role of local authorities. I think that this is particularly relevant to the issues of and the themes of the conference, in particular as far as the governance is concerned. Indeed, local authorities are themselves governments, and even if local authorities representatives are not part of the negotiations, of course, this is an intergovernmental negotiation, it is important to ensure the rights and close chain of inputs between the national governments, the institutional framework, and the activities and responsibilities of local authorities. There are a lot of very good examples. I don't want to go through all the major 8 recommendations that have been listed by the local authorities representative. I think that also in that list there are many useful and interesting inputs for our position, for elaborated further. Second, the role of the business and the industry major group in a very close relationship with the science and technology community. Indeed, we need important role for both groups in terms of favoring innovative investment, innovative approach toward the green economy. It is not only a matter of developing strictly the green sector of industry and activities, but probably the major issue is how to innovate what we already have as an industrial system in our country. So it is very much important what has been said about innovation.
Thank you. And I'm told that Mr. Christie, yes, please go ahead, just talk.
Yes, thank you very much, and very interesting interventions from our 3 colleagues from 3 different major groups. The central question that was asked, at least from the point of view of my constituency, the other part of the Western Europe and other group, is how to encourage innovation and its diffusion. And for my particular constituency, a major part of the answer is the centrality of intellectual property rights. These may vary a bit from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, but without a modern and coherent intellectual property regime, much of the innovation that we're capable of doing as societies would in fact, in our view, not take place. And as a backstop and a necessary complement to that, the importance of creating the right enabling environment in countries that are trying to attract the private sector investment. The private sector is the source of most of the innovation that takes place, and they rely to a very important degree on an adequate intellectual property framework. But even in societies, you've noticed, where there is more state direction, it is interesting to see the importance of, for example, patents. And one very large emerging economy that I think probably most people know what I'm talking about, has now become the 2nd largest sort of patents globally. So the underpinning to important degree independent of the type of governmental structure, the underpinning of intellectual property rights, although it may vary from jurisdiction to jurisdiction to some degree, is really a critical part of ensuring innovation and its diffusion. Thank you.
Thank you, yes.
Thank you. Just a very small remark. The title of this cluster is basically innovation, and we certainly do agree, and it was very rightly stressed by the scientific and technological community that it is not just technological innovation, that it is in all fields, institutions and so forth. And what we generally regard as innovation is just the new way of doing business, that is just not business as usual. But I think that on the other hand, and I would like to stress that we are not departing from the general, so to say, business as usual completely. We should analyze what is valid, what is still alive, what is good to retain, and not just to throw away everything and say, okay, we must innovate everything. This is definitely not true. And I recall how important it is these days, for instance, in the rural development in Africa, to rely on the indigenous, that is traditional, that is very old knowledge. And I think that not only knowledge, but also the way of life and styles of culture and everything should be analyzed and regarded as an important inputs to our culture and the way how we are living. And therefore, innovation is definitely necessary. It's absolutely essential. But we should not also forget the old good practices and old good knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you, yes indeed. Any further comments and questions on this cluster from the Bureau or from Member States? Yes, please go ahead, yes, Phil.
Thank you very much, and I think this is only part of the dialogue that we are having with major groups in civil society, because we are also talking with representatives from major groups in civil society on the floor during the negotiations. But it's good to have a grouping so everybody hears what you have to say and what we have to say. And since the question of innovation was touched upon, which is very central to all the themes in Rio+20, since it's at the core of sustainable development, and building on the comments just made by Professor Molnar, I will recall very interesting dialogue that we had in the context of the second committee with a professor from Grenada, Hugh Seal, in which he said, talking about transfer of technology, don't give us outdated technology. That is not what we need. He said, in particular, about small island developing states, that small island developing states, I'm not from the small island developing states, but I found this very interesting as an element for our reflection on the issue. Because of the scale of their economies, they can very well be sort of a laboratory for new technologies. So this is a very important issue. Of course, traditional knowledge is very important, but it's not sufficient. Developing countries also need outdated technology. It's not the case of perpetuating the divide and, developing countries being the repository of traditional knowledge, whereas innovation is seen as the exclusive property of developed countries. And international cooperation can play a major role in this, including South-South cooperation. I just wanted to add this element to the dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador, indeed. I know it's Monday morning and I know it's early and it's been a hard week last week. Great, we have time for I think about 1 or 2 more questions and comments and reactions on this cluster, and I see a hand there. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, and we do appreciate very much the possibility of having a more interactive debate rather than at the occasion of the last Informal Informals. From the perspective of the group that I represent, namely the EU and its member states, there's a richness of contributions that we've heard this morning covering quite a number of issues. And I think that we have in our positions that we've taken throughout the negotiation process tried to approach most of them. And I think we've made it pretty clear that there is a clear role and a very strong challenge at the same time for innovation, for science and technology, for industry in the transition to a green economy. And we are therefore keenly interested in a strong involvement by the major groups in this process, because it will not happen without them, clearly. Also, we recognize that given the rapid urbanization as well, urban areas, and I think that we would agree with you that cities alone is not what we're talking about, but we're increasingly talking about also the surrounding areas, and clearly spatial planning is a key issue in that context. But also when you look to the different areas that we're dealing with, it's very difficult to distinguish where we would have a genuine separate target or a separate area on sustainable cities, and where the different policies that we are discussing are actually impacting on urban areas. Name it, whether you talk about energy, whether you talk about water, whether you talk about anything else, there is always a crucial issue of how to approach the solution in these areas for cities and urban areas. We also hear you loud and clear with regard to the participation of a major group in the process that we are engaged in. And it is very clear to us that in the process that we've engaged in now for a couple of weeks, the voice of major groups is not really heard. It is not heard as a distinctive voice. It is perhaps heard by some of us on some issues when we're able to take up the proposals that some of you make, but at that point in time it may become a national position, therefore not very visible as a contribution from major groups. So we have been advocating all along the process that it would be advantageous to find a way to allow major groups to make input into the informals and informals, recognizing the difference of status between major groups and negotiators, but to find a more structured way to let negotiators know what major groups have to contribute to or have to say on different things that are going on. And I think we have, through our representatives in the Bureau, made that point over and over again. We recognize that in the context of the UN process, there are limitations that are set by existing rules of procedure and existing institutional practices. Nevertheless, we know that in many processes, innovative ways have been found to address these issues and allow a more interactive debate and the contribution by major groups to the discussion. And we continue to believe that the process would benefit if that could be made possible. And certainly we, through our representatives in the Bureau, will continue to look for ways to do that as much as possible in the days and weeks to come.
Thank you very much, Pete, for that.